Luis Elizondo is a former US Army Counterintelligence Special Agent who became Director of Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program in the US, what is commonly known as AATIP. Upon joining AATIP, he was an out-and-out skeptic when it came to UAPs and UFOs, but upon leaving, he became one of the most vehement voices for disclosure in the US today. But is he just doing it for attention and money, as some claim? Or was he even Director of AATIP, as others have called into question? Join myself and Neil here on Aliens Explored as we discuss the life and work of Luis Elizondo. And a huge thank you to our Explorer of the Week, allowing us to talk about Luis, Jonathan Perna. Jonathan is one of our Patreon patrons who has subscribed at a tier which gets him a mention periodically as Explorer of the Week. It is thanks to our Patreons that we are able to continue doing this series. So thank you to Jonathan and all our Patreon patrons.
Aliens Explored is a weekly podcast exploring famous and obscure cases of UFO sightings, alien abductions and other strange events from both a believing and a skeptical perspective, whilst keeping an open mind. I'm Stu Jackson, a professional actor and amateur ufologist with a particular interest in the crop circle phenomenon. I'll be debating that otherworldly visitations are real. The truth is out there.
And I'm Neil Kelly. I'm a professional actor as well and used to work for the military as an intelligence analyst. I'll be arguing from a more doubtful point of view. I mean, it's all a bit far-fetched, isn't it? Hello listeners and welcome to Aliens Explored, your weekly podcast looking at those mysterious lights in the sky, those mysterious visitations and those mysterious people involved in covering it all up. I'm one of your hosts, Neil Kelly.
And I'm your other host, Stu Jackson. Hopefully we're trying to uncover stuff, though, that people might have covered up.
Well, that's why we've got to uncover it, isn't it? Because someone's covered it up.
Yeah, it happens.
Someone's not been. Well, I'll go with you up to a point on that one. What's been covered up?
Oh dear me! How are you keeping, Neil? Are you over your COVID now?
I think so. Janet keeps telling me off for coughing all the time. That's
right.
The wife. And says I probably don't realise how much I'm doing it. And I said, well, but I've had COVID. That's why I'm coughing all the time. But yeah, it wasn't that bad. I mean, because I do this. I'm doing an acting job, which requires the use of my voice. And I started coming down with a sore throat one day, and I thought, well, perhaps I've just overdone it. I didn't do a proper warm up, and I've had lots of work to do, and lots of shows to start, and I thought, I've just strained myself a bit. And then that night, it was like swallowing razor blades. And it's always, when your throat's that sort, you seem to always need to be swallowing all the time.
Yes.
So, and so I didn't have a voice. I just couldn't make myself heard. So I called in sick. And then it was the day after that I tested positive. But, so it's just 5 days isolation now. And by that time, my throat was better. And I'm back to work. But some of the younger people, some of the younger, fitter people than me have gone down with COVID and been off for much longer with it. I got off lightly, I think.
Well, this was you think it was your second bout, wasn't it?
I think so. I think I had a bout very early on, back before there were any tests available. So I can only presume, I had something, and it left me with this cough that went on for weeks. So I think it was, but I've had my 3 jabs. I think I'm being offered a 4th one in in the autumn, in September, October, the fall for our American listeners. So hopefully that means I've built up antibodies now, having had another little bout and gotten over it.
The trouble is with the different variants. I don't know if that's quite how it works. I don't want to be a put down right.
No, I know.
We do need to be careful.
All it has to do is mutate again, and then suddenly I'm not invulnerable anymore.
No, that's it. And there's a lot of people going down with it at the moment. I mean, cases here in the UK are going up very dramatically at the moment, as we know.
Yeah.
So earlier in the year, I was looking to do a show in Edinburgh Fringe, which is actually, as this show goes out, Edinburgh Fringe will be most of the way through as it goes public, this show. So but as we're recording, Edinburgh Fringe has not quite started yet. But I was originally down to do a play in Edinburgh Fringe, and I pulled out very, very early on, and it's not something, as an actor, you'll know, Neil, that is not something you do lightly at all, because you get blackballed and castigated and seen as unreliable in the industry.
Yeah.
It can be quite devastating to do that, but I did. I mean, I spoke to the director, who fortunately is a friend, and I sort of explained, basically, I didn't feel comfortable because of COVID, the COVID situation, and not knowing how it was going to be. This was right at the beginning of the year. Well, that director has now gone down with COVID, and quite badly. So that's putting that whole thing in a big question mark over it, and hope you feel better soon, Joan, if you're listening. I know Joan has listened to some of these. If you're listening, I hope you feel better soon, and I hope Edinburgh Fringe has gone ahead and gone well.
I hope so, yeah. It's been for a lot of criticism this year. I mean, it is the premier arts festival in the UK, probably, but people
possibly in the world.
Possibly in the world, and because there's been a lot of talk this year about, well, it's not what it was. It's become very corporate. It's become very, very expensive. There's a shortage of accommodation, so landlords are coining it in, and it's. I remember someone saying to me that the Edinburgh Festival is the cure for if you're worried that you've got too much money.
Yes. Well, having put on a show, I've produced and directed a show that and I was in it as well, and I co-wrote it. But having produced a show that, yes, I can definitely attest that. But here's the thing: what they don't. I've seen an article in the Edinburgh Evening News talking about how terrible it is that all these artists, they're all like charging a lot for their ticket prices, but they don't talk about the Airbnbs, like, which is one of the cheapest ways to stay there, of course, is like £1,000 a week. For an Airbnb. It's ridiculous money in Edinburgh. They don't talk about like the huge, insane costs that the venues charge. 40-seater venue, and you're talking thousands and thousands of pounds. Basically, a small show, if you sell out, you're lucky if you break even. They don't talk about that. But anyway, that's a whole... Oh, you're getting me on a soapbox now, Neil.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, a lot of big stars will go there. A lot of well-known names will go up to Edinburgh, and they will. They're fine. They're guaranteed to get their audiences.
I think they have a different arrangement. They are paid by the venues
to be there,
to go there. So they're getting a set amount. The venues know that they're getting the ticket money in, so that's all fine. But when you're not a name, it's basically it. We did really, really well with our show. Really well. It wasn't quite sellout, but it still cost thousands. To put it on up there. Now I'm really glad I did. It was an amazing experience. But and when you do something like that, you sink your money. You basically you treat it as lost money before you even sell a ticket. You don't put a show on and I've seen it happen where artists will say, oh, I really hope I sell more tickets because I've spent my rent to get up here.
Yeah.
It's like, well, no, don't ever do that. Only ever put a show on there if you've basically got nothing else to do with the money.
But I can see how you think this could be my big break. This is my last chance.
It happens.
A lot of people spend an awful lot of money to go to Hollywood.
Yeah,
and try and break in, and they'll have a blitz, a tour of all the agents. I mean, there are agencies in the UK that are just geared to take. Well, you got to find your own way out to Hollywood. Got to find your own accommodation, rent a car or something, or buy a cheap car, and then they'll arrange some auditions or some visits to casting directors. But I don't have any faith in that. They have things like that here. They'll meet the casting directors, and it's nothing comes of it.
No. I mean, extremely rarely does anything. You hear the stories, but it's like it's 1 in 10,000.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've digressed. We haven't even mentioned. We're nearly 10 minutes in. We haven't even mentioned what it is we're here to discuss.
Despite the fact that with my welcome, I did almost see into it about those mysterious people involved in covering it all up. And of course, we're going to talk about one of those people today, a guy called Luis Elizondo, who was involved in covering it all up and now apparently wants to bring it all out in the open.
Well, I mean, it's interesting you've put it that way. So to give listeners who might not have heard of Lou before a little bit of background, this is a former US Army counterintelligence special agent who went on to become director of what we generally call AATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Now, this is one of the government's committees looking into basically UFOs, and UAPs and technologies in the skies, and is it a threat? So he was director of that. Now, when he became director of AATIP, he was an out-and-out skeptic.
Well, he did actually say that he was recruited. Yeah, he said he where was it? All the stuff he was dealing with. He dealt with stuff like coups d'etat in black market terrorism, drug cartels, that kind of stuff. But he told a reporter that he might have been selected for AATIP because of his scientific background. I mean, he's got science-based degrees. His work as a counterintelligence agent protecting American aerospace technology, and his distinct lack of interest in science fiction.
Yeah.
So, this wasn't a guy prone to flights of fancy.
No, this is, and he certainly said in many interviews, he when he became director of AATIP, he was very skeptical about UFOs. He didn't believe that there was, he believed that there was a rational explanation for the whole lot of it. Now, he's come out the other side of that on the absolute opposite end of that spectrum.
Convinced that, you would think if anything was being covered up, he'd be in on it, wouldn't he? He'd be.
Well, he was and still is to a degree, because when you see him in interview, I find him an absolutely fascinating chap to watch in interviews. He's been described as a whistleblower, but I don't think that's an accurate term for him, because whenever he talks, he will say quite candidly, there are things I can't talk about. And he'll
that's not what whistleblowers say.
Refuse to answer certain questions. But he'll say, but what I can talk about is this that's been made public and that's been made public. And he might say, I have the belief that. So for example, when I saw one particular interview of him where he was asked the direct question, does he believe or does he know that the government have a crashed UFO? And he gave this really long, thoughtful pause, and he said, I can't answer that directly, but what I can tell you is that I believe that the government has exotic materials.
So he couldn't say, I don't know. If they have got one, they haven't told me about it. They
He
haven't let
certainly
me in on
didn't
it.
say, I don't know. I mean, he was in a position to know as director of
It sounds like he
surely.
wasn't in a position to know. It sounds like he wasn't in the loop for that kind of thing.
As director of AATIP?
Well, and even that's had some doubt cast upon it, hasn't it? Some people have said they couldn't find any evidence that he was director of AATIP. I mean...
No, I mentioned this in my speculation video prior to this, that I had a feeling this might crop up. Yes, but the whole discrediting people who are public about things, who encourage disclosure, is not a new thing, is it?
A Pentagon spokesperson, Christopher Sherwood, said... Mr. Elizondo had no responsibilities with regard to the AATIP program while he worked in the Office of Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence up until the time he resigned. So, the thing about the intelligence services is, of course, they keep their cards very close to the chest, and they won't even tell you stuff that they're allowed to tell you if they can avoid it. And of course, you can't do
that. Well, so if that were the case, why haven't they sued him? Why haven't they taken him to court?
Because if they did, that would give credibility to his story. As Julian Assange has said, if I wasn't telling the truth, they wouldn't be trying to shut me up. If I was just a fantasist making this stuff up, they wouldn't care. And people would eventually come to their own conclusion that I'm a fantasist. So, but again, with the intelligence services, special forces, all these exotic branches of government, you can't submit a freedom of information request about anything. You can't ask the Pentagon if he was the head of AATIP or worked for AATIP, because they won't tell you, and they'll tell you they're not obliged to divulge that sort of information.
Well, it's not like AATIP itself was a secret department. They were a very public department. And all the documentation shows that he was director of them at that time.
But I bet there was secret stuff within that department. I bet there was people who weren't officially working for AATIP who actually were in reality.
Absolutely.
We're through the looking glass here, mate. We're in the world of intelligence, and everyone's lying.
I'm looking specifically at what you said. This guy from the Pentagon has said, and I'm saying that at the time there was public documentation coming out from AATIP with Luis Elizondo's name on it.
Okay.
So, yeah, I absolutely agree. There will have been people associated with AATIP who we'll never know the names of, but this is the opposite of that. This is, very publicly. He was director of it.
Okay. But there are people saying he wasn't.
Yeah, but that's not a new thing, and it's certainly not a new thing for us to discuss on this show.
Yeah, I mean, he went on television, didn't he? He went on to a program called Unidentified.
Oh, he's been on lots of programs.
Inside America's UFO investigation in 2017. Yeah, and he gets they have all these shots of him sort of peering through the curtains and looking like he's looking out for the men in black who are coming to take him away or take him out.
Yeah, he does strike me as quite a paranoid person. Certainly, you hear about him meeting people for coffee to be interviewed or what have you, and he'll sit with his back to the wall where he can keep an eye on the door and and things like that. But I don't know if that's just a product of him being in counterintelligence in the first place. I mean, intelligence services. You've worked in intelligence services within armed forces. I mean, does it produce a little bit of paranoia and always watching for threats?
That kind of behaviour, saying, "Oh, I've got to sit with my back to the wall. I've got to keep my eye on the door because you don't know who comes through." Like Wild Bill Hickok. That's kind of. That's Walter Mitty kind of stuff. Oh yeah, we got it. This is a real secret, and my life's in danger, and the government's terrified of me, and they're going to hunt me down. No, I mean if you were operational and you were meeting someone for whatever reason to pass off information or to collect information, you would have a team with you keeping lookout so that you can just relax and concentrate on getting the information or delivering the information. You would have other people doing that. You wouldn't be sort of back to the wall. I've got to,
but he doesn't have a team now.
And talking, no, he doesn't. But all the, talking in euphemisms and what have you. It's, I don't know. It all sounds a bit playing at it. Let's play at spies. Let's
see. I'm thinking about the as you know, Neil, I occasionally do a security job with a lot of ex-military intelligence people. And these are people who spent basically most of their lives until they retired in the army, in special operations stuff. And actually, there's an element to that with them. The way I'm thinking about, when I've sat with them in a restaurant or, in the bar of the hotel we're staying in or things like that. Yeah, they now I'm thinking about it, they always sit where they can keep an eye on the doors, maybe that's just a coincidence.
I mean, I suppose
a lot.
They will develop habits of, checking who's in the room, checking where the exits are, things like that. But but all this sort of sneaky beaky peering through the curtains. I mean, all the stuff on TV, that was all done for just effect. It's.
You sure?
Yeah. And speaking in euphemisms, all that, either tell me what you got to fucking tell me or don't. But don't say, well, if you know what I mean, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, all that sort of stuff. I can't tell you this, but let's put it this way,
Well, he's being very careful, is Luis Elizondo, not to... I mean, obviously, you've got the American version of the Official Secrets Act that he will have signed. And he is very careful not to breach that. He is very careful about what he says and what he doesn't say. And I don't think it's so much like, if you know what I mean. It's more, he just says, well, I can't talk about that, but what I can tell you about is this thing that was made public. And here's why that's particularly interesting. And, and he often says, I've seen more interesting things than that, but I'm just not allowed to talk about them.
Yeah, and yet there he is talking about it. I mean...
Well, no, he's not.
If you look at...
all he's saying is, I have seen more interesting things, but I can't talk about them.
Yeah, but even saying that, that's opening your... that's... You protect information by not even making people realise that information exists, or certainly not that you know what... If you say, well, there's this big secret and I know it, but I can't tell you, well, someone will try and get that out of you somehow. That you're opening yourself up, you're making yourself a target, and also the kind of Official Secrets Act that you sign is really vague. I mean, what we signed in the military, which is Part 2 of the Official Secrets Act, it pretty much says you cannot tell anyone anything about anything ever for the rest of your life. They could get you for anything. So there's none of this, well, I can tell you about this, but I can't tell you about that. No, they'll get you for it. They could come after me, even though I'm talking about, sometimes I talk about stuff that I did, but it was over 30 years ago, nearly 40 years ago. The technology doesn't exist. The world has changed, but they still might decide that something is still, oh no, that's still a secret. We haven't released that information. And we're going to do you under the Official Secrets Act for it, if they can be asked, if they can assess that some kind of damage. In fact, I think when you're talking about intelligence services, they don't even have to show that any damage has been done, because they can say, oh, well, we can't divulge that because it's a secret. It's we can't tell you why we're prosecuting you because it's a secret, but you've divulged a secret. What secret? Well, we can't say that because it's a secret.
Is it possible, though, that obviously we're talking about the US Army as opposed to the MOD? Is it possible that in their version of that official secrets that there is a clause in there saying, unless it's in the public domain, unless we have made it public?
No, because a lot of the stuff I dealt with in Army Intelligence, and I say it's a long time ago, maybe they're going to come after me for this, or maybe they're not. A lot of the stuff that we saw that that was on documents stamped secret and top secret, but this information is in the public domain. And we were told, but people won't necessarily have made the connection between this and that. Even though these two bits of information are in the public domain, they won't know that there's a connection, and they won't know where you obtained it from. Because that was a big secret as well, who we're listening to, who we're spying on, not just the information itself, where we got it from. That's the big secret.
Well, I'll give you an example of something that Lou has talked about quite publicly, is the videos released in the last couple of years by the Pentagon from the USS Nimitz.
Yeah.
The tic-tac-toe, the gimbal.
Yeah.
Those videos. He's talked about those. Now, I'm trying to think of a situation whereby if he looks at the video and he comments solely on the content of the video that has been made public by the Pentagon, how can they possibly get him under the Official Secrets Act?
Because he could be, talking about the content of the video. If he just says, well, yes, that's a light traveling from right to left across the screen. Okay. But if he starts talking about what kind of aircraft and what kind of camera and what kind of speeds it was going, information that isn't readily discernible from just watching the video, you're in the zone there. You're divulging military secrets and military capabilities.
He talks about some interesting things when he looks at it. So he'll talk more about, the pilot who, publicly we know who the pilot is. The pilot was trained in X, Y, Z. He was trained to identify aircraft at 20 miles away and trained whether or not to, pull the button and fire on that target. That's the level of training of that pilot. And here's what he is reporting. But that's all public information. Obviously he's trained to differentiate between friendly and enemy aircraft, and that's usually by a radar signal. You don't rely on naked eye identification. It's not Second World War where you're looking at the shape, it's got those distinct squared off wings of a Messerschmitt 109. At 20 miles, you're within range then. You've got a missile coming your way. You can't rely on that. But you're going to see occasion. In this case, they saw some lights that they couldn't identify. Okay, so it sounds to me like you're skeptical.
I'm skeptical about this guy who, he's ex-military. I don't know what kind of circumstances he's in now, his financial, his life circumstances, what his mental health situation is like. That's something you always have to look at with ex-military, because the military life does put a tremendous strain on people, especially if they've been in war zones, especially if they have been involved in harming people. His background comes from, couldn't be more right-wing Republican. He's a Cuban American. His dad, Luis Elizondo III, I presume. So we're talking about Luis Elizondo IV. He was a Cuban exile who took part in the Bay of Pigs fiasco back in 1961, whatever. So, Cuban exiles in Miami, they really hate the Democrats because it was JFK who sold them out. Who didn't give them the necessary support and made their invasion a failure. yeah, I don't, I'm just skeptical about a guy like this who was suddenly he's going on television and he's acting all sneaky beaky and I could tell you this or I could tell you that, but I can't tell you this, and I'm just a bit, yeah.
But
my bullshit detector is buzzing.
So on the contrary, I suppose I'm looking at the guy from obviously a very different perspective, because I'm seeing someone who, like you say, absolutely sort of right wing, militaristic, these UFO stuff's bullshit kind of guy, becomes director of this particular program, looking into these things, and goes from being a skeptic to being an absolute believer, comes out the other end of this, so he's come out of and away from the military and has become a strong promoter for disclosure. And I can see how being made aware of some of the things that's really going on can make someone like that.
I would like to see, because I just get the impression that he didn't see anything definitive that he could talk about. He couldn't talk.
Not that he is allowed to talk about. No.
Well,
he only ever talks about things that are in the public domain.
So what's the point of that? They already talk about stuff we already know.
Well,
what he could bring to the table is something we don't already know.
No, he's a strong vocal proponent for disclosure, which we need. We need as many of those as possible. And someone coming from his background as a strong voice for disclosure, that's great. That's good.
I mean, all right. I mean, it's a big ask for me to say, okay, put your life on the line and tell us something we don't know. Tell us this big secret that's being kept by the Pentagon, by the men in black at Roswell or area.
Well, what would that achieve? Because it'd just get denied. He'd be accused of making it up. There'd be no way of proving that he didn't.
So what's happening anyway, isn't it?
What's that going to? Well, no, he isn't. That's the thing. He isn't being told he's making, well, except for aspects of his career. The stuff he actually talks about is stuff that's public anyway. So
yeah,
but he gives a fresh perspective on it. He gives a fresh pair of eyes,
but not from the perspective of someone who says, "Well, actually, I know this. That this is a military secret." But relating to this issue, like reverse engineered crashed alien spaceship technology. Yes, I know we've got that, and we've used it in the B-1 bomber has got this that we got from an alien spaceship.
But that would be breaching his official secrets or whatever.
Yeah, but it would make him credible.
Would it, though? Because the Pentagon would just say, well, no, that's nonsense. He's making it up.
Of course,
unless he can prove it, which, of course, he wouldn't be able to, because it's not like he came out with armfuls of, alien metals or...
No, but I mean, looking at the timeline, did he sort of finish it? I mean, when did he retire? Was it 2017 or thereabouts?
Something like
or 20, or was it earlier? 20. The AATIP program ended in 2012. After 5 years, it only ran for 5 years, according to the Department of Defense. So 2007 to 2012. Elizondo worked from 2008 until his resignation in 2017 with the Office for the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence in the Pentagon. And he was ending in 2012, he was the director of the AATIP. But AATIP ended in 2012. So what I'm wondering is, did he sort of come out and ponder it and think about it for a long time, and then something happened in his life, and and then he decided, I know, I'm going to go public with what I know, or was it, as he was coming up towards the end of the thing, all this stuff here, the public needs to know about this. I'm going to take these documents, I'm going to take these materials, and I'm going to show people.
So he retired in 2017. And from what I'm seeing, essentially, so while he was working for effectively the Pentagon, for the government, no, he wasn't coming forward. And then I can see why he wouldn't whilst he's working for them. And then, he comes out and he becomes a voice for, like, you've got all this stuff, you know things, make it public.
Apparently, he resigns to protest what he characterised as excessive secrecy and internal opposition, and asserts that underestimating or ignoring these potential threats is not in the best interest of the department, no matter the level of political contention. So I guess, he's working for the AATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. He's identified these phenomena as a threat, but the government hasn't.
Well, in interviews,
this is a threat.
In interviews, he's the first to say, his training teaches him to see everything as a threat or as a potential threat.
Well, because that was his job. Yeah, if you work for AATIP, that's that it's in the job title. It's in the department name. Yeah, that's what you're there for, to look at these things and try and work out if this is anything that could threaten us. And often, as we've seen, that the main concern is that a potential terrestrial adversary like China or Russia has suddenly made a technological leap to the extent that they can now violate US airspace with impunity.
Yeah. And, he said that was like the first thing they looked at was, is it our own secret technology? And he said he had access to all of the latest stuff that the government was doing. So they ruled that out. Then the next biggest thing is, well, is it a foreign, agency coming in? And no, they ruled that one out. Well, what's left?
Knowing how government departments work, especially with classified material, I can imagine he asked the first question, is this something of ours? And the answer he gets is, well, we're not allowed to tell you because it's a secret.
No, he was very candid. He had full access to all of the latest stuff. He's been very candid about that.
So he would have seen
not that
things.
He asked the question, just he had access.
He had access, so he would have quickly known if something that's been spotted in the skies. Because we've talked earlier about how the US government would encourage people to make these UFO calls while they were testing new kinds of aircraft, because it acted as a smokescreen. Yeah. So this guy says he saw this flying saucer. Well, yeah, but we know that he's a local nut job. So who's going to pay attention to that? Actually, it was our flying saucer that I knew bomber.
But when you're talking about vehicles that go from 80,000 feet to a few feet in a matter of seconds, hovers about for a bit, then shoots back up to 80,000 feet again, we don't have the technology. We don't have anything that could produce the energy required to do that.
No. We can only do that with a beam of light.
No. And
nothing's more substantial than that.
The level of technology that we're talking about with Pentagon-released UFO footage. So, anyway.
But, yeah.
So it seems like we're on opposite sides of the fence with regards to Lou then.
We are, yeah.
But what do you think, listeners? Is Neil right? Is there something... Is the guy just an opportunist, perhaps, who's looking to make some bucks from the UFO community? Or am I closer to the truth and the guy's just genuinely wanting disclosure?
And I should say, if he is an opportunist, good on him. Good on you, Lewis, because there's a lot of public interest in this kind of thing. And if you're just doing this, people will watch these shows for entertainment, and you're entertaining them, if nothing else.
No, I would be very angry if that were the case, because people who do these things when they are not genuine, that obfuscates the actual proper research going on, and it puts us back. And it only does damage to this area of research. But anyway, listeners, let us know what you think about Luis Elizondo. Is it somewhere in the middle? Is the guy just genuinely wanting disclosure and hoping to make a few bucks out of it? Perhaps I can see that potentially. But yeah, let us know what you think via the usual means. You can email us aliensexplored@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter by searching Aliens Explored. Or if you join our Patreon program at any level, you get exclusive access to our Discord server where you can chat about this and any other topic we discuss on the show with like-minded people. And you get some.
And also, Lewis, if you're listening, we'd love to hear from you. We'd have you on the show.
Oh, absolutely. Open invitation right there. Anyway. Join us next time, though, as we will be going back in time, Neil, over 70 years, back to 1950, and the British government's Flying Saucer Working Party.
That's such a British title, isn't it? The men from the ministry, yeah.
But this is the group that briefed Winston Churchill all about UFOs. So we'll be hearing what they had to say next week. In the meantime, keep watching for all kinds of disclosure coming from anywhere. And of course, keep watching the skies. Take care for now.
Keep watching those television programmes. Bye-bye.
Aliens Explored is a Fecal Films production in association with Juicy Falls. Music by Darren Mafucci and editing by Stu Jackson. Find us on Twitter or Facebook by searching Aliens Explored or visit us on aliensexplored.com.